For many reasons, including HNG2, I want to go over my loadouts that I've used in HNG1, I guess, or just HNG, you know, of course, depending HNG2 or not, then this is just Heroes and Generals. But regardless, the loadouts that I would use, because are these type of loadouts going to still be the loadouts that I would pick in HNG2, possibly HNG2 type games? There's actually been some recent RTS games coming out where you can where it's FPS and then RTS. I don't think RTS like this just yet, but it's getting there. And for Heroes and Generals, this is a pretty big game and a pretty big staple in that genre where it's not. I think there was like one game that was before this that was pretty similar to HNG. If not, then HNG is the only game legitimately that has the FPS that's like this and the RTS that's the whole RTS system intertwined with the FPS system, which is actually pretty crazy because we don't only have FPS loadouts like my SMG Anatoly, but they also had like the transports, which I only just had these two transports, and then they had the badge system. So like for HG2, for other games, like if there is ever this type of FPS and RTS, is there going to be like this type of system in? If not, or if so, how is it going to be balanced with and without this system? Because it's not going to be balanced in like how HG is. You know, it's not going to be Deadeye's not going to be 50% faster. You know, is there going to be a heavy set and it's not going to be 85% damage? You know, taken, or, you know, like all that type of stuff. So, like, having H and G, especially with, like, the main type of meta badges, because the badges, the balance, or the, they did change the badges around, like, 2019, so the meta changed, where you didn't really have to use heavyset gold, because this gives you more health. When they actually reset the settings, it turned the meta back to where you gotta use heavyset. So the main badges that I would use, especially for like my SMG guys, this kind of goes for each faction too, is Deadeye and Heavyset. Even though I could run other stuff, and I do love fast reload, like how is fast reload going to be in HNG2 and or other games, because that is something that is super good. But if there's a game where HNG2 doesn't have Heavyset, then the badge meta that it was for a period of time where you could swap on fast reload and have Deadeye, that was super dope. Like, medics could really be more medics and not have, like, more of a disadvantage. So there's big opportunities for HNG2 to possibly take out the heavyset or adjust it so much where it's not going to be like this out of the gate and then they change it, just like, because that would be like the community wouldn't really receive that too well because they'll be upset that they changed this. But if it's already changed out of the gate, it'll be more, you know, receivable. But regardless, SMG, because I mean, I love all the SMGs. I've shown over the years of HNG Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 SMGs. Technically, this is a Tier 3, even though this is crazy. And also the PPD. They did change the metas with the SMGs over the years, along with the other weapons. So, like, this would vary on how much I would use an SMG versus an AVS, especially when I got an AVS and over the semi-automatic rifle. And same thing for the LMGs. LMGs, they were always really good, but they nerfed them and stuff like that. That included RPM changes, actual like accuracy changes, the whole 9 yards, magazine changes. So for this dude, this would be like my main guy, since I didn't have too much infantry. And this is the same thing for for every faction, is that I would have everything basically on one guy besides like all the SMGs. And then I would make an SMG guy, and then like an AT guy, or an anti-infantry personnel dude, which carries a flamethrower, AT rifle, and semi-automatic with heals. So some basic stuff, which is kind of interesting because if they remove the classes, I wonder if you're going to be able to customize these type of things more and be more OP. Because with this game also, you got tank crewmans. You got all this stuff, so you got tank crewmans. Now, I just added this in from the, whatchamacallit, gold event from 5 to 2023. They added, like, unlimited gold and all that stuff, so I bought these tanks. I mainly used a light tank and all that stuff. Didn't really level them up too much. And that's kind of the common story besides the US faction and kind of the German faction. German faction's almost there, but for every faction, I don't have the max tier tanks. I don't have a Tiger 2, I don't have SU-100 before the point of getting all this golden stuff, which is big because I technically didn't, until I'll get the chance to do so with all this gold, didn't get the chance to actually use those said things and the ATs that revolved in the war, so I don't know exactly with a lot of experience behind my back on how certain things feel, especially in these areas, because I'm mainly stuck with the infantry stuff and some of the tank stuff, but mainly the infantry stuff, and then also the anti-tank. So I did see how their health and all that stuff and their balances and how all that stuff has changed. But from a first-person perspective and actually getting that experience from first person is way different. But I could still see that the tanks are actually really good in this game. Like, they balance them, and they, not only balance them, but it's like War Thunder type level. It's not super War Thunder, but it's pretty close. You gotta shoot certain compartments, and it's got like an ricochet type of thing. Oh, you know, the whole 9 yards. It's actually pretty spicy, which is interesting because, especially for HEG2, when the game is out the gates, because these vehicles have felt like this since the beginning, but the balance changes, and then the new additions of tanks and like a whole new faction with, you know, all new tanks, it still uses the same system. So is that system going to be improved upon? Is it going to be more realistic, where if you turn left, it's like it only turns one track, versus how the tanks work in this, where it's a little bit more arcadey? Because this is an arcadey game, and that's reasons why I love everything about it. Or if like in other games they have like their variants of this, how is the balance going to feel? Because like to really think about that over and over and over, especially more as I like go in and really think about this stuff, I realize Rito, not just T-Line, but Rito balanced the game pretty well, or created things in like not just statistical balance, but like this is World War II stuff, and they pick certain vehicles and all that stuff. I wish they added way more vehicles, like War Thunder levels, which would make the game way more varied. But like how they have the game set up, it wouldn't be like War Thunder too much. I mean, it would be very varied, but you know, it's got its own tank style. The maps are different. The game's played different. There's FPS, there's AT, you know, the whole 9 yards. So with all those things, it's like they're counterbalanced. And the same thing goes with the planes. Now for my Soviet faction, I just got a lot of extra infantry that I was supposed to level up. I did actually get this guy, the Grenadier anti-infantry, because having multiple infantry, that's like the key. And I wonder if that's going to still be the same thing, because if they in HG2, because if they stick with that no class system, then I wonder how they're gonna, because they've hinted towards like a single thing, but you're gonna be able to have multiple infantry, so it's like pseudo classes. I don't know if they fully know, but I bet they do know, but I don't know. We'll see. Because if HG2 is not gonna be a thing, then that doesn't really matter in the end if they figured it out or not. But for the pilot stuff, is this actually gold? Dude, especially for the Soviets, only recon plane. Just got this with the new gold stuff, so don't mind that. And that's with the battle pass and whatnot. But same thing for paratroopers, for like max tier tanks and planes, where I haven't gotten too much experience on them. I've actually used a little bit over the time when I was given the available resources on the German faction, when I had that paratrooper and stuff for many years. I could see, especially from veteran paratroopers, this is an infantry just dropping in from the sky, like at different spawn points. It's very OP, like very, very OP, especially communicating. So with voice communication in HG2, this could be very insane. And then for the recon as well, the recon, I'm a US recon main, so for me, going back over to this bad boy here, I've read Master Son. This is technically a legacy character, and I think that recon over there was too. Actually, no, the other one is. But the legacy characters, you're able to change between specialists over here by cost and whatnot. Now you can't do that. But regardless, this is the first guy that it was an infantry turned into a recon. So that's what I have here, right? Actually, no, infantry, that's right. Infantry turned into a tank crewman. Then my computer at the time couldn't run it. Turned into a recon. Actually, no, I think turned into an infantry and then turned into a recon. Because you had to go back to infantry to get to the recon again. And I love that system. I'm surprised I got rid of it. But regardless, because there was no money difference, it was faster and it would give them more money. But also, this stuff here is all new. I only had a motorbike for years, and my main loadout was this for years. Especially since 2015. It was brutal to get all these modifications, especially early on. I tried match sights, didn't like how it changed the stuff, and never ran a sight on this gun. Never bought one. Even with the new update of scopes, never bought one. Until that, well, not for this, but like for other guns I have. Because I prefer the iron sights. I did run the pistol, but then originally when you actually had to buy the binoculars to set the squad here marker, that's why this is here. So I put this here because they did change that, and I bought the pistol before I started streaming this game and making content off of it. I decided to put this back because I actually like the binoculars and kind of like use that type of play style. Even though the pistol is really good. Bop, bop, or shoot them once, and then bop, bop, they're dead, or bop, they're dead, or shoot them once and they're dead. Because heavyset gold, they're like 15 HP, bop, bop, or 5 HP, bop, or 3. Bop. Then I got, of course, because with all these recon, or like this recon being OG, I didn't get to the max levels. For this reason is because I started going on to other infantry, because I realized actually having more infantry meant more loadouts in game. So I decided to put a halt on getting all the extra stuff on the recon, along with a lot of other things as well, like the amphibious vehicles. I kind of like held on that, and the spawn trucks and all that stuff. I kind of held on that, especially for money-wise, because they were pretty expensive. I mean, yeah, you can see the prices here. They are pretty expensive. You buy 3 of these for 3 infantry, you're spending over 150k worth of credits, and then a couple thousand gold. So with that, it's like, well, that's the unfortunate issue. And then with my generals, each one of them comes with the gold update and all that type of stuff. Actually, no, that came with the battle pass stuff. I got some experience on these. The general idea, like having this where you can't bring them into battle, I hope in H&G 2, they actually allow you to bring this guy in battle and have, if not real life generals, they take inspiration from real life generals and like have like some signature stuff. Like, if they're not going to make Eisenhower or, like, whoever, then make someone who kind of, like, a character that kind of looks like Eisenhower, but not named Eisenhower, and then have his abilities as Eisenhower or whatnot, so, you know, like, something like that. So we could see them in-game, and they, it'd be sick if they also had in-RTS abilities, too, since they're commanders, and only commanders have that. Ooh. Because that could also be a Battlefield 4 type of commander system. But with this, you're only limited to a few badges here. Again, if the badge system is changed, this would change a little bit, but not by much. I mean, it would help a lot, because each percent matters dramatically, especially when they added the new RTS boost system. Having the ability to have multiple slots with ATs, like this is huge, because you're able to not be restricted on a certain tree of ATs. And in H&G 2 or in other games, when they have this type of system, how many different trees are there going to be? Is it going to be similar to H&G 1? You know, because if so, then are we getting like a remastered of H&G 1 and not like maybe an improvement of like more ATs and more diversity stuff? That's like the big question as well, because that would be like quote-unquote their first H&G if it's not made by TLM. So we'll see. But maybe they'll add on to it more because they're not using this type of like engine and stuff. Regardless, this all is intertwined because of like how everything is, how this game is. It's affected by the RTS and FPS. But with this tank crewman, I would run, especially with every faction, I would run one main tank crewman that has like the big boys, and then I would run the second tank crewman that has the light boys, and I would like level them up and have that. That was actually a recent addition into me doing like tank crewman stuff, because for the tank crewmans for the German faction, yeah, big boys, yeah, then for the German faction I actually started doing some tank crewman stuff, so light boys, but also I guess technically light boys, but they do a lot of damage, so glass cannons, and I think for, yeah, then also, yeah, so for the US faction, didn't complete as much. Yeah, I didn't get as much done on the US faction, so the German faction is the faction that have the most tanks, the most panzers. But for all the tanks, especially after all this time, I find that, especially just like in real life, the German tanks were crazy OP because of just like how they were. So just like in game, they're going to be crazy OP. So if they're not going to be balanced right in H&G 2 or balanced similar to what they are right now in H&G 1, since they're pretty balanced in an arcadey way, unless H&G 2 is going to be realistic, I hope the balance is going to be good. And then if any other H&G type game, I hope that vehicle balance is going to be good too. Squad has a similar thing. I mean, Hell Loose is similar, but with this aspect, that's really huge because everybody's time is in here is being affected by a person who's playing one of these characters and using one of these weapons, or using one of these vehicles, or using one of these badges, or using one of the camos that makes them less seen. Like that, it goes all the way to here. That's how much like just a little bit of a certain thing can affect and like really, you know, have like a butterfly effect all the way to the person's AT, and they don't get war funds, and then it's not fun for them, or they're just like well, I mean, well, basically be that, because I mean the flip of the coin there is they're getting a lot of war funds, so they're actually happy. Regardless, you know, there needs to be a balance there, so not one side's getting slammed each time, especially where if this type of RTS map, how are the lanes going to be in HG2? We saw a little bit. It looks like that's completely remastered. Is a different RTS game going to use an HG1 type of system, where it's all connected together and each town is a specific town, so it's always like that? But if in HG2 they add more maps, so if you go to this town, it's actually this town. Like, that's stuff that I want to see for an HG type game or an HG2. And that all goes to the weapons, because if the maps aren't fun, sight lines. If the weapons aren't fun, the balance system, how far can you shoot, yada yada, how easy is it to actually modify your weapons, yada yada, how expensive is it, how is the maintenance going to be for everything. It's actually, if you really, especially when I like say it more so, I just get reminded, just like, geez, there's a lot to this game already. Like, a lot to like everything. Of course, they use like a system for each weapon, but still it's modified for each specific weapon. So it's just like an HG2 type game, I hope, even though it would be costly a little bit. They do it a little bit, but like for each gun, change the ammunition even more so, or like show more that type of changes, even though they already do an H&G, but I feel like it's a bare minimum, and that affects the visuals. That also affects more things you put on it, which affects your in-game visuals. So that'll really depend on like the balancing and all that type of stuff, and decision making on whether to do that or not. I do actually kind of keep the same type of universal theme for each faction: SMG guy, LMG guy, AT guy / anti-infantry, tank crewmans, 1 stat tank crewman, 1 not, fighter pilots, which just have recon planes. US faction actually had a medium, and before the new German FW plane came in, like all the new tier 2 planes came in, I think, or tier 3 medium planes, I bought the tier 2 plane, so the medium plane, that was the one of 2, and then they added the Mustang, so I didn't get the Mustang or any of the new planes, so I didn't test them out, but especially in launch, and then over time, I've seen how their balance is, and that's a whole new level of balancing, especially with the paraplanes in that game. How is the maps with the AA going to be? How much damage? Yada, yada, yada. There's so much. It's actually this game is a super ambitious game, just what it is right now, which is kind of nutty, but like, imagine the next level of it, especially being able to customize the loadouts a little bit more in ways like maybe more helmets or stuff you could put on helmets, so you can have a helmet, change a helmet, but you could put stuff on the helmet, either via War Thunder system, or just like you go here and there's another thing that's just like a card icon, and you place a card, or, you know, whatever, per faction has different things per faction and unique, so you can't use the German things on the US helmets. Same thing. I want that, especially in H&G2, to still be a thing. They do have the captured weapons, and I really did like the uniqueness of having each faction being fully restricted to each faction's weapons, but depending on how they potentially do the system, they could remaster it to make it better. Just really depends. There's a lot of things there. For a lot of opportunities for improving this. I think the leveling, how long it takes to level everything, I think that is perfect. Like, for everything, it's perfect. For certain weapons, it's harder, or for certain things, like AT, like just starting, but then they added like the 1 bazooka, which they didn't add here, but I feel like, well, I mean, that would just make sense. Starting AT, it's really hard, but like once you start it, and once you get that bazooka or like Granada boost, then you're good. Because yeah, the Granada boost wasn't always here, so it was the Granada boost they introduced to make it easier. Yeah, so I want to see like the Granada boost. I want to see more, because weapons. The game has a lot of good unique weapons. TLM comes in and adds the Liberator on the maps too. HG2 or an HG2 type games, I want that. Panzerfaust, or like health crates, ammo crates. Maybe we could deploy those crates, maybe some map ones, but also we could deploy them too as equipment. Maybe we have a thing that actually builds as well. More, just overall more unique weapons available here. And like kind of like crazy prototype weapons, I'm fully down with. I mean, Battlefield 1 had some... I had that one weapon that was never seen on the battlefield, but everybody loves it, and it's super cool. So, I mean, hey, why not add some World War II weapons like that in here, which they kind of have in some ways, but like more variants of the MP40 that have slightly longer reload and less damage by like a little bit. So having this MP40 is better technically, you know, something like that. Just like the MP34, where it's like it is better, but you could still go off with the MP34 if you rock it. So it's got to have that balance, which they've actually achieved in this game. So hopefully in HNG2 or in an HNG2 type game, they achieve these specific type of balances where you can use this tier 1 versus a tier 2 and still win if you're good enough. Because originally it wasn't like this. It was this would always win no matter what, and you would get decimated. But they rebalanced it, and now this is like depending who's better can win on either side. So I hope that is going to stay there in HNG2 or get implemented in HNG2 or is in an HNG2 type game. But I guess that kind of really goes over all the loadouts here because again it is pretty universal on like each type of loadout that I use. I do have a medic too. The US and German faction has a medic. The Soviets don't, I don't think. And the medics are pretty good too. So hopefully they actually add like medical crates or like other like maybe if you die you can revive someone after a few seconds because there's might as well give them like a 3-second longer delay or something like that. It'll change the depth dramatically on how fast you can deploy and stuff. So we'll see how that plays out in HNG2 and in an HNG2 type game.